Imagine packing your bags, for a church convention.
Right. You're expecting stained glass and theology.
Exactly. You're expecting to spend your week debating, I don't know, Bible translations or maybe the finer points of mission work out in foreign fields.
Yeah, the typical church stuff.
Right. But then you walk into the convention center in Phoenix, grab your coffee, sit down in your delegate chair, and suddenly you realize your denomination has just paid a $9 million legal settlement.
And is actively pursuing a $111 million lawsuit against one of its own universities.
Right. I mean, that is the exact jarring reality for delegates heading to the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod Convention this July. And today is Thursday, July 2, 2026. The convention is imminent.
It is right around the corner.
So we are diving straight into the deep end of the financial pool today.
Yeah, and I mean, the contrast between those stained glass expectations and the harsh fluorescent lighting of corporate litigation, it's always a massive shock to the system.
Oh, totally.
But it is so vital that delegates don't just, look away from it. Financial governance in the church, it doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Right.
It doesn't exist just for its own sake. It exists to protect the trust of the people in the pews and ultimately to support the proclamation of the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, if the financial plumbing is broken, the living water just doesn't reach the congregation.
Exactly.
So if you are listening to this, you are likely a pastoral or a lay delegate. And our mission for this deep dive is to look at one highly specific, highly consequential part of your convention workbook.
Floor Committee 8.
Yes, Floor Committee 8, which handles finance. And look, we aren't going to just sit here and read you the minutes.
No, nobody wants that.
Right. We are going to evaluate every single resolution through a very specific lens, which is kingdom over castle.
Yeah, kingdom over castle. That phrase is going to be our guiding principle today.
Let's unpack that a bit.
Sure. So the underlying philosophy here is that the synod, right, the institution itself, it serves the congregations, it serves the pastors, the commission ministers, the mission fields.
The local ministry is basically the point of the spear.
Exactly. The institution is not supposed to serve itself. So we're looking for structures that offer, low control but high accountability.
Low control, high accountability. I like that.
Right. We want a strong outward witness. And perhaps most importantly for a finance committee, we need to draw a very clear distinction between doctrine and business judgment.
Because they get conflated all the time.
All the time. I mean, protecting a legal entity is sometimes necessary, sure, but it is not the same thing as confessing the faith.
Okay, so before we can even touch Floor Committee 8's actual resolutions, like the bylaw rewrites, the seminary funding models, publishing house logistics, all of that, we really have to clear the air.
Oh, definitely. There's a lot of confusion out there.
So much confusion. Because I hear delegates talking, and there's just this massive cloud of anxiety regarding the legal standing of the synod right now. People are mixing up universities, they're swapping dollar amounts.
Yeah, they're combining completely different lawsuits into one giant monster under the bed.
Exactly. So I want to break this down mechanically for you guys listening. Let's start with the hot chalk situation. My understanding is that hot chalk was this massive loan guarantor situation involving Concordia University, Portland. But, I mean, I keep hearing people say it's going to bankrupt the synod. Is that accurate? Or is that just, rumor bleeding over from other issues?
It's the rumor mill. That is the perfect example of two completely separate crises bleeding together in the collective anxiety of the church.
Okay.
We need to separate them definitively right now by party, institution, and financial exposure. Let's just look at the mechanics of hot chalk first.
Walk us through it.
So this situation revolved around the closure of Concordia University, Portland, and the financial arrangement was incredibly complex. There was a $15.3 million loan from the Lutheran Church Extension Fund, the LCEF.
Let me pause you right there, because the mechanics of church extension funds are fascinating. But they're a bit counterintuitive to people used to normal banking.
Very true.
The LCEF isn't just like a pot of magical church money, right?
Yeah, not at all.
It relies on the investments of everyday church members.
That is the crucial context here. Everyday Lutherans invest their personal savings in the LCEF, and the LCEF uses those funds to offer loans to churches and church institutions.
Wow.
So when the LCEF issues a $15.3 million loan to the Concordia University system, they are playing with the invested trust of the laity.
That is a lot of pressure.
It is. And because the university system represents a really unique kind of risk, the LCEF required a backstop. They basically said, we need a $10 million guarantee directly from the LCMS.
So the Synod itself was essentially co-signing the loan.
Basically, yeah.
If the university system couldn't pay, the Synod was left holding the bag for $10 million.
And it gets worse than that. Because this was an unsecured line of credit, when Concordia Portland collapsed and closed its doors, that $10 million guarantee instantly transformed.
From a hypothetical backstop to an actual bill.
Right, into an active, burning crisis for the broader church's balance sheet.
But looking at the sources we have, this is now settled, correct?
Yes. And delegates really need to understand how it was resolved so they can finally put it to bed.
So what are the final numbers?
Well, the loan balance was sitting at about $11.5 million. The LCEF credited $1 million that they had retained as backing for an indemnification to the University of Oregon.
Okay, stemming from the sale of the Portland campus, right?
Exactly. Then the LCEF agreed to release the LCMS guarantee entirely in exchange for an additional final payment of $9 million from the Synod.
Okay, wow. So just to put a neat bow on hot chalk for everyone listening, it was a Portland issue. It involved a $10 million guarantee. The Synod paid $9 million to settle it and get out from under that specific liability.
Correct.
It is a concluded matter of corporate finance. You can exhale on that one.
You can exhale on hot chalk, yeah. But you have to immediately inhale for the second issue, which is entirely separate, vastly larger, and very much ongoing.
And this is the Synod versus Concordia University, Texas. CTX.
Yes.
This is the one with the $111 million price tag, which, I mean, just wrapping my head around that, how does a church body end up suing one of its own universities for that kind of money? Because CTX didn't close like Portland did.
No, they didn't close.
They did something else entirely.
They executed a maneuver that really strikes the very heart of the tension between state corporate law and ecclesiastical bylaws.
Okay, unpack that.
So in November of 2022, the CTX Board of Regents voted to adopt a structure where the university is governed solely by its own Board of Regents.
Meaning what?
Meaning they fundamentally rewrote their governing documents. Now, their stated intention wasn't to abandon the Lutheran faith or to leave the LCMS theologically, but they wanted to completely sever the structural governance ties.
I have to ask about the motivation there. I mean, why pull the ripcord like that? Why sever the ties?
Well, according to the district president's report, it was basically a survival mechanism.
Really? Survival from what?
The Concordia University system was bringing a resolution to the LCMS Board of Directors, and CTX leadership had this deep existential fear that this resolution might actually recommend CTX be closed or maybe consolidated with another university.
Oh, wow. So they saw the writing on the wall, or at least they thought they did.
Exactly. So the CTX Board of Regents utilized state corporate law to change their charter and declare themselves sole governing. They were effectively trying to outmaneuver the church's bylaws to prevent their own potential demise.
And that is just a staggering collision of two different worlds.
It really is.
You have the church saying, under our bylaws, you belong to us. We have ecclesiastical authority over your board.
Yep.
And then you have the university saying, well, under the laws of the state of Texas, we are a registered nonprofit corporation. Our board has fiduciary duty, and we just voted to change our charter. I mean, who wins that?
That is exactly what the $111 million lawsuit is designed to figure out.
Ah, I see.
The Synod maintains that CTX has absolutely zero authority to secede. At the 2023 convention, the delegates actually passed Resolution 703.
Which did what?
It called CTX leadership to repentance and declared their actions null and void under LCMS bylaws.
But, I mean, resolutions don't carry the force of state law.
No, they don't. So on September 1st, 2023, the LCMS Board of Directors filed the lawsuit.
Okay, let's talk about the fallout of that, because it isn't just lawyers arguing in courtrooms, you know. There are massive real-world consequences for the people who are actually working at that university right now.
Oh, the leverage being applied is immense. Right now, CTX is currently a disaffirmed university.
Meaning?
It has been stripped of its right to certify church workers.
Wow.
And even more severely, CTX was removed from all connections with the LCMS, including Concordia Plan Services.
And Concordia Plan Services, just to clarify, that's the massive apparatus that handles retirement, disability, and health plans for church workers, right?
Exactly.
Okay, I want to highlight the mechanics of that removal, because I saw a number in the sources that just made my eyes go wide.
The $4 million.
Yes. When CTX was removed from Concordia Plan Services, They were hit with a $4 million penalty. Where does that number come from? I mean, is it just a punitive fine for leaving?
It's not a fine in the punitive sense. It is what is known in the world of multi-employer benefits as a withdrawal liability.
Okay, explain that like I'm new to this.
Think about it this way. Concordia Plan Services is a giant financial pool. All the churches and universities, they pay into it. And the actuaries do this incredibly complex math, assuming all these institutions will be contributing for decades.
Right, to pay out the retirements of the people already in the system?
Exactly. So when a massive employer, like an entire university, suddenly leaves the pool, it completely breaks the actuarial math.
Oh, because suddenly all those expected future payments are just gone.
Yes. So the $4 million assessment is the calculated cost of them leaving the system. It ensures that the remaining churches don't have to subsidize the retirement benefits of the people CTX left behind.
Okay, that makes sense financially.
Yeah.
Are they paying it?
They are currently paying that penalty in installments with interest.
Wow. So delegates, if you're listening, keep this framework in mind. Hot Chalk is a concluded $9 million payout in Portland. CTX is an ongoing $111 million lawsuit in Texas, complete with a $4 million withdrawal liability.
That is the reality.
When you step up to the microphone in Phoenix to debate financial transparency, this is the shadow you are standing in.
It hangs over everything.
Which naturally brings us to the first major item on the docket today. Resolution 801, which is titled, "To Encourage Transparency and Accountability in Legal Judgments and Settlements." You can find this on page 133 of today's Business Issue 1.
And given the legal landscape we just mapped out, you can completely understand why transparency is the very first thing Floor Committee 8 is addressing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So let me give you an analogy for how I think most people in the pews view church finances.
Okay.
Think of financial transparency in the church like a glass-bottom boat.
A glass-bottom boat. I like that.
Right. You are asking congregations to get on board to give their offerings to support the mission. For them to trust the vessel, they want that glass bottom to be perfectly clear.
They want to see the water.
They want to look down and see the structural integrity of the boat, to know where the money is flowing, to see the depths of the ocean they're navigating.
Makes perfect sense.
But at the same time, the passengers don't necessarily need or want to see the personal luggage of the crew.
Right.
They don't need to dig through private personnel files or read the names of anonymous donors. There is a balance between institutional clarity and individual privacy.
The glass-bottom boat is an incredibly useful way to visualize the tension in Resolution 801.
So what does the resolution actually do?
Well, the plain language summary of this resolution is that it basically reaffirms the Synod's existing process for financial disclosure under a specific rule, which is bylaw 1.5.4.
Okay.
It essentially thanks the congregations for their support and commits the Synod to following its current reporting rules.
I'm putting myself in the shoes of a delegate right now. I just heard about a $9 million settlement. I just heard about a $111 million lawsuit.
Yeah.
I read Resolution 801, and it essentially says, hey, we promise to keep following the rules we already have.
Right.
I would immediately push back on that. I mean, if it just reaffirms the existing rules, is it actually doing anything? Why write a whole resolution just to say we will keep doing what we're already doing?
And that instinct to push back is exactly what a delegate should be doing.
Let's dig into it then.
Let's analyze the whereas clauses of the resolution to see the underlying logic. The text emphasizes that the Synod is a voluntary association.
Meaning its authority resides in the convention with the delegates themselves.
Exactly. It also makes a really strong point of noting that the board of directors has a strict fiduciary duty to manage the business affairs of the church.
So it's establishing, who holds the steering wheel and who owns the boat.
Yes. But then the rationale pivots. It heavily quotes bylaw 1.5.4 to demonstrate that full disclosure is already mandated by the rules. But, and this is key, it intentionally highlights the built-in exceptions to those rules.
The exceptions, like what?
It points out that things like donor privacy, personnel files, matters discussed in executive session, and legal privilege are kept strictly confidential.
Okay, let's break down executive session and legal privilege, because frankly, those sound like convenient cloaks to throw over the glass bottom of our boat.
They can certainly feel that way to an outsider.
What do those terms actually mean in a church governance context?
Okay, so executive session is a very standard parliamentary procedure where a board closes a meeting to everyone except board members and essential staff.
Right.
It is used to discuss highly sensitive matters, like, say, firing an executive or discussing a pastor's moral failing or, and this is relevant here, strategizing for an active lawsuit.
Okay, and legal privilege.
Legal privilege refers to attorney-client privilege. If the board of directors is discussing settlement strategy for the CTX lawsuit with their lawyers, that conversation is legally protected. If they publish those minutes, they waive the privilege and potentially destroy their own case.
Okay, that makes sense. But applying our kingdom over castle lens here, the resolution is clearly trying to protect the castle.
It is heavily leaning that way, yes.
It assumes that the current bylaws are entirely sufficient to balance transparency with legal prudence. And it does not offer any new mechanisms for the congregations to actually see into the depths.
Right. It creates accountability by reminding everyone of the rules, but it aggressively avoids unnecessary control. The financial and stewardship impact here is essentially zero new costs because it is merely maintaining the status quo.
Right.
The governance and authority flow remains completely unchanged. The board of directors will continue to report to the convention exactly as they have been without any new specific mandates for legal disclosures.
But this is where the plot thickens for me. Because why was this resolution even drafted in the first place? It didn't just fall out of the sky.
No, it didn't.
It was drafted because congregations were demanding answers.
Right.
And this is where we have to look at overtures 816 and 818.
Yes, this requires an explanation of the omnibus process, which is honestly one of the most misunderstood mechanics of a church convention.
Let's unpack that for the delegate. What is an overture?
An overture is essentially a formal request sent in by a local congregation or a district asking the convention to take a very specific action.
Got it.
Now, Overture 816 was explicitly titled, "To encourage Synod transparency and unity regarding concluded hot chalk litigation."
Very specific.
Very. And Overture 818 was titled, "To encourage transparency and accountability in legal judgments and settlements."
Okay, so you literally have local churches saying, hey, we want a full accounting of why we just paid $9 million for hot chalk, and we want rules for how you report this stuff in the future.
Yes, but neither of those overtures are actually going to be debated on the convention floor.
Wait, why not?
Because the floor committee placed both of them into what is known as Omnibus Resolution A.
Oh, the parliamentary graveyard.
That is exactly how some delegates view it.
I mean, how else do you view it?
Well, when an item is placed in Omnibus Resolution A, it means the convention is formally choosing not to vote on the specific action requested. Instead, they are assigning the responsibility to a board or commission to basically handle or study it.
So in this case?
In this case, the congregational requests for deep transparency about hot chalk and legal settlements were swept into the omnibus and referred directly to the Synod Board of Directors and Legal Counsel.
Okay, I can absolutely see a delegate stepping to the microphone in Phoenix, just boiling with frustration.
This is going to happen.
I mean, if I'm a lay delegate who runs a business back home, I'm looking at this and saying, wait a minute, we asked for an autopsy report on a $9 million failure. And the floor committee's response was to take our request, hand it to the exact board that oversaw the settlement, and pass a resolution saying the current rules are fine.
The tension you are describing is palpable, and it's very real. But we do have to look fairly at both sides here.
Okay, give me the other side.
On the institutional side, legal matters involve intense risk management. Settlements often come with strict non-disclosure agreements or NDAs.
Right.
If the Synod over-discloses the mechanics of the hot chalk failure, they could theoretically violate a settlement agreement. They could incur further liability or even expose individuals to defamation suits.
Okay, that is a fair point.
So referral to the board of directors allows the people who actually know where all the legal landmines are to decide what can be safely disclosed without blowing up the castle.
But on the congregational side, if you hide everything behind the shield of legal privilege or executive session, the glass bottom of the boat gets really muddy.
It does.
It gets opaque. And when people can't see the bottom, they stop trusting the boat. And when they stop trusting the boat, they stop funding the mission.
Exactly. So what is a delegate to do?
Yeah, what are the options?
If you are at the microphone, you have to navigate this carefully. You could simply vote to adopt 801 as it is written, trusting that the board of directors is doing their fiduciary duty.
Yeah.
Or you could propose an amendment on the floor that builds a bridge between legal prudence and congregational trust.
Okay, what would that amendment actually look like? Give me the mechanics of a floor action.
A delegate could move to amend the resolved section of 801 by adding a clause. This clause would direct the board of directors to provide an annual, high-level summary of all concluded legal judgments and settlements.
A high-level summary.
Yes, but you would explicitly write into the amendment that this summary must exclude confidential personnel details, donor information, and anything protected by active attorney-client privilege.
That is a brilliant piece of needle threading.
It works, right?
It really does, because it acknowledges the legal reality, like we aren't asking you to violate an NDA or waive privilege, but it demands that once a matter is concluded, like hot chalk, the church body gets a basic accounting of what happened and what it cost.
It forces the omnibus concerns back onto the table in a very safe way.
Right.
It satisfies the demands of the congregations who wrote overtures 816 and 818 without jeopardizing the castle. Because ultimately, how a church handles transparency is a deeply theological issue.
It really is. And the closing gospel frame for this first section, it's found in 1 John 1, Walking in the Light.
Yeah.
Transparency in the church isn't just about satisfying a secular auditor or keeping the IRS happy. Honest accounting frees the church from suspicion.
That's right.
Because if the finances are hidden, rumors just fill the void. Paranoia takes over.
Yeah.
But if the finances are clear, the church can put down the calculators and get back to proclaiming Christ.
Amen. And that trust, it extends far beyond just lawsuits and settlements. It extends to how the church cares for the very people tasked with proclaiming that gospel.
Which brings us to the next major component of Floor Committee 8, managing the worker safety net.
Yes. We are pivoting from legal transparency to the massive, incredibly complex apparatus of Concordia Plan Services, or CPS.
So if you're a delegate, you're looking at Resolution 802. You can find this on pages 133 to 135 of today's business. And this resolution involves a massive, multi-page bylaw rewrite.
It is extensive.
We are talking about fundamentally amending bylaw section 3.7 and 3.6.1.1. Now, I think most people sitting in the pews just think of CPS as the place that handles the pastor's health insurance and retirement checks.
Pretty much, yeah.
If the checks are clearing and the health insurance is working, why do we need a massive structural rewrite of the bylaws? Are we just doing corporate housekeeping, or is authority quietly shifting behind the scenes?
This is a prime area for delegates to engage their critical thinking skills, because the mechanics here are dense, but they are incredibly important.
Okay, lead the way.
Resolution 802 redefines the overarching synod-wide trust entities simply as the Concordia plans. But more importantly, it aims to legally clarify the vast responsibilities of Concordia Plan Services. Because CPS does not just manage a 401k or a standard health policy.
What else do they do?
They manage Concordia Risk Solutions and various ancillary programs.
Let's define Concordia Risk Solutions and ancillary programs. Because earlier in my research, I came across the term captive insurance in relation to CPS.
Yes.
What is captive insurance and how does it function within a church body?
This is a vital concept for delegates to grasp. Usually, if a local church wants property or liability insurance, they go out into the commercial market and buy a policy from a giant secular company like State Farm or Liberty Mutual.
Sure.
But when you have an organization as massive as the LCMS, with thousands of churches, schools, and universities, the premiums you pay to a secular insurer are just astronomical.
Right.
So an alternative strategy is to pool all your own money, assume a calculated amount of your own risk, and literally create your own internal insurance company.
Wow.
That is a captive insurer.
So the church essentially becomes its own insurance company to save money and keep the premiums in-house.
Exactly. And it can be a wildly prudent, brilliant financial strategy. It can save the church millions of dollars over time.
Right.
But mechanically, to do this, you have to create new, incredibly complex corporate entities. You have to play the financial markets. You have to navigate massive corporate liability. You are no longer just a church benefits office.
You are running a financial institution.
Percent.
Okay. Applying our kingdom over castle lens, creating internal insurance companies to protect the institution's assets. I mean, that is the definition of castle thinking. It is heavily inward-facing.
It is. Though one could argue that fortifying the castle in this specific way is necessary to ensure the workers out in the kingdom actually get their benefits.
That's a fair counterpoint.
But the whereas clauses in 802 identify that the current bylaw language simply hasn't kept up with how complex CPS has become. They argue there is a dire need for modern corporate governance and specific high-level board expertise to manage these sophisticated financial vehicles.
Okay, but what is the actual mechanism of the resolution? What does the resolved clause fundamentally change about how CPS operates day to day?
The most consequential mechanical change is the installation of a massive accountability firewall. The resolution limits the ability of CPS to rapidly create new corporate entities. Under the new bylaws, if CPS wants to form a new corporate entity, say a new subsidiary for a captive insurance program, or if they want to take on a major new area of responsibility, they cannot just do it quietly in a closed boardroom.
What do they have to do?
They must give the Synod Board of Directors and the broader church at least 6 months advance notice. And they must formally propose a corresponding bylaw amendment to the convention.
Oh, wow. Okay, so this actually pulls structural authority away from autonomous board actions and forces it back onto the floor of the convention.
Exactly.
You can't just spin up a new insurance company in the dark. You have to come to the delegates, explain why you need it, and get the bylaws changed.
Precisely. So the governance and authority flow shifts noticeably back toward the delegates. The financial and stewardship impact here isn't measured in a direct dollar outlay for the bylaw change, but the stewardship implications are vast.
Because it protects the Synod from hidden liabilities?
Yes. It forces daylight onto new corporate ventures before they are launched.
Okay, so the mission and congregational impact is indirect, but it's foundational. It ensures the safety net for pastors and teachers remains stable because their retirement funds aren't being gambled on risky corporate spinoffs without synodical oversight.
Right.
But I want to talk about the watch for concerns here. Because whenever you mandate, quote, modern corporate governance and specific board expertise, you run a huge risk of bureaucratic bloat.
Oh, absolutely.
The resolution changes the board composition to require specific financial, legal, and actuarial expertise. My question is, does this new composition adequately represent the voice of the actual participants?
That is the crucial tension. If you fill a board entirely with corporate actuaries and risk management lawyers, they will run a very tight financial ship.
Sure.
But will they understand the crushing reality of a rural congregation trying to afford family health coverage for their pastor? Do they have the perspective of a commissioned teacher making a very modest salary while trying to save for retirement?
And this isn't just a hypothetical concern, right? Local churches are screaming about this. This is exactly what Omnibus Overtures 803 and 805 were trying to address.
Yes. Let's look at the mechanics of those overtures. Overture 803, submitted by congregations, asked for bylaw amendments to require annual ERISA comparable transparency to all participants.
ERISA. I know that's an acronym. Break that down for me like I'm a 5-year-old. What is ERISA and why does a church care about it?
Okay, ERISA stands for the Employee Retirement Income Security Act. It is a massive federal law enacted in the 1970s. It sets minimum standards for most voluntarily established retirement and health plans in private industry.
Okay.
If you work for a secular corporation, ERISA guarantees that your employer must provide you with incredibly detailed, regular reporting about how your retirement plan is funded, what the investments are, and whether the plan is mathematically solvent.
Okay, so if ERISA guarantees that transparency, why are the churches asking for it in an overture? Don't they already get it?
They do not. And here's why. Church plans are legally exempt from many of ERISA's reporting requirements.
Wow.
The federal government, trying to respect the separation of church and state, basically said, we won't heavily regulate the internal pension plans of religious organizations.
Okay, so the government gave the church a carve-out to protect their religious liberty. But the unintended consequence is that the pastors and teachers in the plan don't get the same legally mandated financial transparency that a guy working at a secular factory gets.
Exactly. Overture 803 was essentially congregations saying, look, we appreciate the government exemption, but we want that same level of detailed ERISA-style financial transparency provided to our workers anyway. We want it mandated by our own church bylaws.
That makes total sense. In Overture 805, that was asking for actions to stabilize the actual cost of the benefits, right?
Yes.
Because health premiums are a massive, sometimes suffocating burden on local church budgets. I mean, I know churches where the health insurance premium for the pastor is the single line item preventing them from calling a youth worker or opening a preschool.
It is a profound friction point for local mission. But just like the transparency overtures we discussed earlier, both of these congregational requests, ERISA transparency and cost stabilization, were moved into Omnibus A.
Unbelievable.
The convention will not debate them. They are just referred to the board of directors of CPS to study.
Wow. So if I'm a delegate looking at this bylaw rewrite, My questions at the microphone are locked and loaded.
What are you asking?
I'm going to ask, how will the changes to the board composition in 802 ensure the voices of small church pastors are actually heard when you set premium costs?
Excellent question.
And I would tie it directly back to the CTX withdrawal liability we discussed earlier. How does this new governance structure prevent a situation where a university is abruptly removed from the plan and slapped with a $4 million penalty? Because that penalty is a real-world demonstration of CPS exerting massive, almost terrifying financial leverage over an institution.
It is the ultimate display of institutional power, and it really underscores why the governance structures in 802 matter so deeply. If a delegate wants to take action on the floor, they have options. A delegate could move to amend Resolution 802 by pulling language directly from that discarded overture 803.
Bringing it back from the grave.
Exactly. You could propose an amendment that mandates a racist-style transparency reporting annually to all participants.
I like that.
You could also amend the board composition requirements to mandate that at least one active parish-level ordained minister and one commissioned minister be legally required to sit on the board.
That makes sure the people who actually rely on the safety net have a hand on the steering wheel.
Yes.
Because the closing gospel frame here is deeply pastoral. It's rooted in 1 Timothy 5:119. The laborer deserves his wages.
Yeah.
Caring for the physical, medical, and financial needs of church workers, I mean, it isn't just HR policy. It is not secular corporate management. It is a deeply theological act. By managing these funds transparently and sustainably, the church ensures its workers can pour themselves out for the gospel mission without their families suffering and anxiety.
Yeah. Well said. And that transition, from caring for current workers to ensuring the future of the ministry naturally leads us to how the church prepares its next generation.
Which brings us to equipping the front lines, focusing specifically on seminary funding.
Yes.
Let's talk about Resolution 803 to fund our Synod's seminaries, which is found on page 136 of today's business. Now, we've talked about the glass-bottom boat. I want to introduce a new analogy here.
Go for it.
I view seminary funding as the church's supply lines in a broader global mission campaign.
Okay, I can see that.
If the supply lines, the funding, the training pipelines, the logistical support, if those aren't transparent and robust, the front line, which is the local congregation, suffers immediately.
Absolutely.
They either don't get pastors at all, or they get pastors who are buried under so much student debt, they literally cannot afford to take a call to a rural parish or an inner-city church.
The stewardship reality of theological education is daunting, to say the least.
Yeah.
The plain language summary of 803 is that it strongly affirms a preference for residential pastoral formation. It formally thanks donors for their historical support, it calls for a new joint standardized funding report, and it invites continued financial backing through the Joint Seminary Fund.
Okay, looking through our kingdom over castle lens, this feels highly congregation-serving. It frames money outwardly. The goal isn't just to build beautiful seminary campuses. The goal is raising funds specifically to train pastors to serve local ministries.
Yes.
The whereas clauses highlight the critical need for pastors, noting the very real pastor shortage and acknowledging the heavy financial burden that residential education places on a student.
But delegates must read the resolve clauses carefully here, because the primary action introduces a new bureaucratic mechanism.
Oh boy.
It directs the seminaries and the Synod to create a joint standardized report on funding. This is an attempt to create accountability.
Let's dive into the mechanics of that. What exactly constitutes a standardized funding report in a university setting? Because standardized is a very slippery bureaucratic word.
Very slippery.
It could mean a highly detailed 50-page forensic audit, or it could mean a one-page summary with pie charts that obscures all the important details.
And that is exactly why standardizing the reporting is so difficult and so necessary. Let's look at the mechanics of institutional accounting.
Unpack it for us.
Seminaries have multiple streams of revenue. They have tuition. They have unrestricted gifts from donors, which they can spend on the electric bill or faculty salaries, whatever.
Right.
But they also have restricted endowments.
And those are different.
Very different. These are massive pools of invested money where the donor specifically said, the interest from this fund can only be used to buy library books about church history, or this can only fund scholarships for students from Nebraska.
Oh, wow. So a seminary might look wealthy on paper because they have a $50 million endowment,
Yeah.
but they might be running a massive operational deficit because they can't legally use the endowment money to pay the faculty salaries or fix the roof.
Exactly. And without a standardized reporting mechanism, it is very easy for an institution to shift money around in its public reporting to obscure structural deficits.
They can hide the problem.
Yes. They might draw down on unrestricted funds to cover operational losses, making the budget look balanced to a casual observer.
Got it.
A joint standardized report forces the seminaries to use the exact same accounting categories, making it crystal clear to the delegates where the money is actually coming from, what is restricted, what is unrestricted, and how much it actually costs to produce one pastoral graduate.
Okay, so the financial and stewardship impact here is twofold. First, it aims to increase giving to the Joint Seminary Fund by building trust. Second, the reporting requirement forces daylight onto the administrative plumbing of the seminaries.
Yes. However, we really must address the watch-for concerns embedded in this resolution.
What are we watching for?
The text heavily, almost exclusively, affirms residential pastoral formation.
That means a man picking up his family, moving to St. Louis or Fort Wayne, and studying on campus for 4 years.
Yes. But we know there is a massive pastor shortage, and the demographic reality of the church is shifting dramatically.
Right. Many men are entering the ministry as second career candidates through alternate routes.
Exactly.
They are doing the specific ministry pastor program, or SMP, where they study via distance learning while actively serving a congregation. Or they are coming through ethnic immigrant ministry pipelines that just don't require moving to a traditional campus.
And this raises a critical question of structural incentives.
How so?
If the Synod officially prefers and directs its joint funding primarily toward residential formation, it may inadvertently starve the alternate routes of necessary resources.
Oh, wow.
And this happens even as those alternate routes become increasingly vital for small, rural, or ethnic congregations that simply cannot afford a fully funded, residentially trained graduate with a Master of Divinity.
So the supply line is prioritizing one specific type of ration, while a huge part of the front line needs something entirely different. If you're a delegate from a small rural circuit in the Dakotas, you might go to the microphone and ask, how will this funding strategy support the men studying through non-residential pipelines, who are literally the only hope for our small churches staying open?
It's a question that needs to be asked. And in terms of floor actions, a delegate could offer a very simple, clarifying amendment here.
Let's see them then.
You could move to require that the joint standardized funding report not only be created for the board, but be published publicly online annually for all congregations to review.
I love that. Full transparency.
Furthermore, a delegate could propose an amendment to the resolved clauses to ensure that the language supporting the Joint Seminary Fund explicitly mandates that a percentage of those funds be allocated to support students in recognized alternate route programs.
That brings the transparency directly to the pew. And it ensures the supply line feeds the entire front line, not just the traditional flanks. Because, as we've said, theological education is not some academic luxury.
Right.
It is how the church ensures the pure preaching of the gospel and the right administration of the sacraments for the next generation.
It is essential.
Funding it transparently is an act of joyful confession. It's the church saying, we believe the gospel absolutely needs to be preached tomorrow, so we are sacrificing to pay for the preacher today.
Amen. And the preacher does not go into the pulpit empty-handed. He goes with the word and he goes with the confessions. Which brings us to the final major block of resolutions under Floor Committee 8.
The word in the world.
Yes, we are looking at the Synod's publishing arm, Concordia Publishing House, or CPH. This covers resolutions 804, 805, 806, and 807.
I find this section fascinating because it perfectly blends high-minded historic theology with hardcore, boots-on-the-ground business logistics.
It really does.
I mean, in the span of 4 resolutions, we go from talking about the 16th century Lutheran confessions to talking about UPS shipping rates and cardboard boxes. It's the life of the church in a microcosm.
Let's begin with Resolution 804, to expand access to the Lutheran confessions.
Oh, okay.
This resolution commends CPH for the physical production of the Reader's Edition of the Book of Cocker. But it goes further. It directs CPH and the Commission on Theology and Church Relations, the CTCR, to explore adding notes and annotations to the online text of the Book of Concord.
Okay, that sounds great on paper. High intellectual and spiritual capital. We want people reading the confessions online.
Sure.
But let's contextualize this for a second. Explain what the CTCR actually is, because they aren't just a group of guys who write helpful study notes. What is their actual power in the Synod?
The Commission on Theology and Church Relations is essentially the theological Supreme Court of the LCMS.
Supreme Court.
Yes. When there is a dispute over doctrine, or when the church needs to formulate an official stance on a complex modern issue, the CTCR drafts the documents. They wield immense dogmatic authority.
So when CPH is told to work with the CTCR on the Book of Concord, that means every single digital annotation, every explanatory footnote added to the online text will have to pass strict dogmatic review.
Exactly. Which means this isn't going to be a quick or cheap project.
Right, and that leads to the watch for concern. How is this executed digitally and doctrinally? If you are adding modern 2026 annotations to a historical 16th century text online, how do you visually and textually separate the commentary from the actual confessions so readers don't confuse the two?
That's a huge design and theological challenge.
Furthermore, what are the copyright implications? The historical text is public domain, sure, but specific modern translations and notes are heavily copyrighted.
Yes, they are.
And most importantly, what is the cost of developing, reviewing, and hosting this digital infrastructure?
Exactly. A delegate should step to the mic and ask for the mechanics of the funding. Before we mandate CPH and the CTCR to build this massive digital resource, can we get a cost estimate?
Like, are we authorizing a $10,000 weekend project or a $500,000 multi-year software development and theological review contract?
It is low-hanging fruit for an amendment to simply request a cost feasibility study before fully authorizing the project.
That makes perfect sense. Now let's briefly touch on resolutions 805 and 806, because these are primarily commendations, but they reveal an interesting structural tension.
What do they say?
805 gives thanks for CPH's careful selection of faithful Bible translations, like the ESV, and 806 commends CPH for prioritizing mission and distribution. It praises them for producing multilingual resources, offering generous discounts, and giving gifts to pastors.
These are strongly kingdom-facing commendations. The convention is essentially saying, thank you for not just being a secular, profit-maximizing corporation. Thank you for acting like a mission arm of the church.
But if we look at the mechanics of publishing, we realize a hard truth here.
We do.
The hard truth is that translating a massive theological work into Swahili or Hmong, printing it, and shipping it across the world is incredibly expensive, and it rarely turns a profit.
It's usually a massive loss.
Right. So if CPH is doing all this mission work, they are doing it out of their own business margins. They're eating the cost.
Which raises a structural observation for the delegate. Right now, the Synod relies heavily on CPH to self-fund these mission discounts and translations.
Yeah.
If the broader church truly wants more resources in Spanish, Hmong, or Swahili to reach the mission fields, it might require actual synodical budget allocations from the Board for National Mission or the Office of International Mission.
It requires actual partnership, not just a resolution of Thanksgiving that expects CPH to absorb the financial hit.
Exactly.
And speaking of CPH absorbing financial hits, that perfectly sets up the final resolution, 807, to address Concordia Publishing House shipping charges.
Ah, yes.
This is where the business reality hits the local congregation's checkbook with brutal force.
The resolution acknowledges a massive systemic pain point for local churches. Shipping costs are just astronomically high.
Everyone feels it.
The text of the resolution actually notes that CPH currently absorbs or creatively manages a staggering $4 million annual shipping burden just to keep resources somewhat affordable for churches.
$4 million.
And it urges CPH to continue exploring cost reduction strategies.
I can hear the murmurs on the convention floor right now. Every single church secretary, every Sunday school superintendent, every pastor knows the pain of CPH shipping costs.
It's a universal struggle.
Let's talk about the physical reality of this. Let's say a rural church in Idaho orders 200 physical Sunday school workbooks for the fall. Those boxes weigh 80 pounds.
Heavy boxes.
They have to be shipped via UPS or FedEx from a warehouse in St. Louis all the way to Idaho. The actual commercial cost to ship that might be $150.
Easily.
For a small church, that $150 shipping fee on top of the curriculum cost is a budget breaker.
And the risk is that if the shipping is too high, that rural church might abandon the orthodox, faithfully translated CPH material entirely.
What do they do instead?
They just go online and download cheap, potentially heterodox material from a non-denominational website.
Which is terrible for the church's doctrinal unity.
Right. So CPH subsidizes the shipping. They eat a portion of that $150 to keep the church buying good material. But again, CPH is a business. They have to pay the post office.
Eating a $4 million burden is a massive systemic friction point that threatens their institutional sustainability.
It really does.
Looking through our lens, this resolution is desperately trying to bridge the gap between institutional sustainability and congregational burden. But the delegate question here is crucial.
What's the question?
If shipping costs are fundamentally outside of CPH's control, because, frankly, CPH doesn't set the price of diesel fuel or FedEx rates, what alternative distribution methods are being explored to bypass the warehouse model entirely?
The mechanical solution to this isn't better cardboard boxes. It is digital delivery and localized licensing.
Exactly. Digital rights management, or DRM. A possible floor action would be to amend 807 to request a specific funded study on expanding digital licensing for congregations.
How would that work mechanically?
Imagine if, instead of shipping 80 pounds of paper to Idaho, CPH sold that church a localized site license.
Okay.
The church downloads the PDFs and prints the 200 workbooks on their own industrial church copier. The shipping cost drops to zero.
It sounds simple, but the mechanics of print-on-demand and digital site licenses completely disrupt CPH's traditional revenue model of selling individual physical units.
Oh, sure. It's a paradigm shift.
It requires a massive shift in how they do business. But getting the word into the hands of the people, whether it's a physical Bible, a catechism, or a digital Sunday school lesson, is the ultimate outward mission.
Stewardship of shipping costs and digital rights directly translates to how far and how fast the gospel can run. If the broader church is spending $4 million a year on cardboard boxes, packing tape, and diesel fuel, that is $4 million not being spent on planting new churches, funding seminary alternate routes, or supporting the mission field. We just have to be structurally smarter about this.
And that reality brings us full circle through Floor Committee 8. From the massive transparency questions of multi-million-dollar legal settlements, to the complex oversight of the workers' pension and captive insurance plans, to the standardized funding of our seminaries, all the way down to the shipping costs of our Sunday school Bibles.
It is all interconnected. So let's recap the through line for you, the delegate.
Okay, let's recap.
You're going to be asked to vote on Resolution 801, essentially demanding that the church abide by its current transparency bylaws. Though, as we discussed, you may need to amend it to actually get answers on legal settlements like hot chalk that got pushed into the omnibus graveyard.
Right.
You are going to vote on 802, executing a massive bylaw rewrite for Concordia Plan Services to ensure they can't spin up new corporate entities without convention approval, while keeping an eye out for ERISA-level transparency for your workers.
Keep an eye out for that amendment.
You'll vote on 803, demanding standardized reporting so you know exactly how seminary dollars are restricted and spent. And you'll vote on a block of resolutions commending CPH while begging for relief on a $4 million shipping bill.
It's a busy committee. And through all of this complex parliamentary procedure and financial minutia, you must remember your lens: kingdom over castle.
Kingdom over castle.
Low control, high accountability. The massive institution of the Synod exists solely to serve the local altar and pulpit, not the other way around.
Which leaves me with a final, slightly provocative thought for you to mull over on your flight to Phoenix.
Let's hear it.
We have spent this entire deep dive talking about how the Synod is building massive corporate firewalls to protect itself. Bylaw 3.7 requires convention approval for new entities. Standardized reports demand exact accounting. Legal privilege and executive sessions shield the board of directors from liability.
Yes, these are all mechanisms of institutional preservation and standardization.
Right. But if you look at the history of the church, from the Book of Acts all the way to the Reformation, the church almost always grows the fastest when it is decentralized, highly localized, and slightly out of control.
That's a fascinating point.
It grows when local leaders take massive, unstandardized risks for the sake of the gospel. So the question you have to ask yourself as you vote on these financial protections is this: are these firewalls saving the church's legacy, or are they quietly strangling its ability to take wild, localized risks for the gospel?
Wow.
Are we so obsessed with protecting the castle from liability that we've forgotten how to advance the kingdom?
That is the ultimate tension between legal prudence and missionary zeal. It is a tension that cannot be solved by spreadsheet, but only by the wisdom of the delegates.
And you stand on that convention floor and you vote on amending a bylaw, or you debate the metrics of a seminary funding report. You aren't just acting as a corporate board member. You are doing theology.
You are confessing what you believe.
Exactly. How a church spends its money, how it structures its boards, and how it transparently reports its failures tells the world exactly what it believes about grace, accountability, and the resurrected Christ. Go to the microphone in Phoenix, not just with a calculator, but with a confession. Safe travels. Delegates. We pray for your wisdom, your courage, and your faithfulness as you navigate these muddy waters to keep the glass-bottom boat clear. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.